Okay, so I was perusing LinkedIn the other day, just reading some posts, and they're all kind of the same vanilla posts, but one stopped me my scrolling dead in its tracks. And that was from a job applicant looking for a job at a company called Stitch Fix out in San Francisco. And her post was a very creative way to get some attention. And she used a Mary Poppins metaphor in order to get that attention, but she still got ignored. So why? My question is, why did she get ignored? And frankly, I think that Colleen has the same question. She doesn't understand why she got ignored. So in this video, we're breaking down how she tried to get attention, and you try to get attention from employers as a job applicant, and what could have backfired in this equation and what could have worked. And then also we're looking at what could the company have done to actually mitigate some of this. So we're breaking that down in today's video. So my name's Rob. I am a former human resources professional. Admittedly, I use the word professional very loosely, but I've had an awesome 27 plus year at some amazing companies, and I'm on a mission to share what I've learned at those companies with you, so in hopes that you could get your dream job, you could get that promotion, or you could just survive corporate America. So again, in this video, we're talking about the tales of this woman, Colleen, trying to get a job at Stitch Fix. Now, I'm going to put it on the screen here, but I'm going to read to you what the post was. It's not that long, so hang with me. So it starts with this. Stitch Fix. Are you looking for a shared services director? I have applied for this role twice. I haven't heard from you. If your job description had been a letter written by the Darling children, which isn't really a Mary Poppins reference, which the comments point out, but I digress. Back to the post. Would have written by the Darling children. I would be floating down your front door on my umbrella. I am practically perfect for this role in every way. I've reached out to Stitch Fix folks in my network and I've received no response. If this is a typical candidate experience, you really need to hire me. I'm great with process improvement initiatives across teams. This is my what's the worst that could happen attempt to get someone at Stitch Fix to schedule a call with me so I can help you do better. Sincerely, Colleen. Now, I like that. I mean, what does this tell me? This tells me that Colleen thinks outside the box. She's super colorful. She's engaging. She's just letting her personality shine through, and she's unapologetically herself, which I love. Right? I know what I'm getting, and I frankly would pull up a chair and have a cocktail with Colleen, but that's just me. Stitch Fix may not want to have a drink with Colleen. So let's look at that a little bit more. So again, she applied twice for this role, and I'm going to assume she didn't even get the auto-generated, thanks for your application, and clearly did not get the auto-generated thanks but no thanks email, which I think had she gotten those communications, probably wouldn't have written this post on LinkedIn. So instead of venting in private, she put this post out there and it garnered, a fair amount of attention. And the other thing too here is that she did the right thing. She reached out to people in her network that worked at Stitch Fix. She tried to reach out to the hiring manager, all that right stuff, and still it yielded no results. Now, this is super frustrating, and I'm sure, people that are, maybe watching this and they're in a job search are probably in the same situation. They're getting ghosted. They're not even getting the obligatory thanks but no thanks email. And maybe this was the straw that broke the camel's back for Colleen. She's like, I've had it. I'm going to take a different approach. And that, led her to post this. So why did this post stand out to me or to a lot of other people because they engaged with it? It was clever. It was bold, and it was clearly human, right? And a lot of times on LinkedIn especially, which is one of my beefs with LinkedIn personally, people sterilize themselves and they become this kind of, everybody seems the same, and it's just kind of boring and nobody's really standing out. So bravo, Colleen, for trying to stand out. And I say, please keep doing you. You will find that right job. Clearly, it's not at Stitch Fix. The other thing I like that she did was she tells a story rather than just expressing frustration, right? And I think that's another thing that was really engaging with this post. That's why I stopped scrolling and I was like, okay, I want to see what she did. Then I want to see what everybody else did, in response to that and who engaged and what they said. I just wanted to know more. So sharing that story was super important. And again, that could very well stand out to an employer. Clearly not Stitch Fix. Just saying. The other thing too is I love the way she used Mary Poppins, because no matter what age you are, you probably have heard of the story of Mary Poppins. So it's a familiar character that she kind of anchored herself to. And what does Mary Poppins equate to in, say, the business world? It equates to resourcefulness, assertiveness, and a certain polish, right? All of those things I bet that Colleen would bring to the table as a candidate or as an employee at an organization. But then she flips the script. This was interesting too, that she flipped the script and offered herself as a solution from a process improvement standpoint. Now, I like that she did this personally. She's like, look, you've got a problem, I've got a solution. Maybe Stitch Fix didn't think they had a problem with their hiring process, which maybe caused that whoever's looking at those resumes and such to disposition her as a no, because that was off-putting. I don't know. I'm just thinking outside the box. I do think that offering yourself as a potential solution to a hiring manager, to an employer who may have a problem, that's a good way to engage somebody. And that if I'm hiring somebody and you're offering me a solution to a problem I have, I'm pulling up a chair. I want to know more. So let's talk about why she was ignored. Colleen's in Texas. The job's in San Francisco. I actually looked for the job posting, and it was taken down at this point. So I'm going to assume, especially with the backdrop of, all this return to office type activity we see across the country, that maybe this job wasn't remote. So that could have been a quick knockout from a candidate perspective. Or even if it was offered remote, they may still have a bias for somebody who is local to San Francisco. So those are some of the, first things that jump to mind that, again, it may not be remote. So Colleen, you're barking up the wrong tree right out of the gate. You're getting, they're not even looking at your resume. They looked at your address and knocked you out of consideration. The other thing too that occurred to me is, as a recruiter or a hiring manager or such, your style that you're putting out there, and again, I love Colleen for being unapologetically herself. That style of hers may be a mismatch with both the organization and or the hiring manager, such that, hey, you know what? Our styles are not going to complement one another, and therefore you got knocked out of the process just from that standpoint. Now, do I think that's short-sighted? 100%. I think hiring managers should look for people that are different from themselves. Not everybody kind of operates that way. So Colleen might have been, knocked out of consideration from, again, being a remote employee or being, having a style mismatch. The other thing I looked at was, and I did look at Colleen's profile, and it's riddled with things that kind of give a nod to how old she is. And let's be real, you've heard me talk about this, and I'll link it here. About ageism and age bias in the hiring process. I've encountered it as someone in their 50s. And I know Colleen is we're probably around the same age. So that could have been maybe a conscious or an unconscious way to knock her out, that, hey, we don't want to invest in somebody who's going to retire in 5 years or whatever it is, right? So that does exist. And maybe, sanitizing your profile, your resume of some dates that are age giveaways, could be the way to go to at least get in front of somebody, right? And maybe get past some of that bias. I'm not saying that people should be knocked out of consideration, because of their age. I mean, obviously I would say that, that shouldn't be a consideration. You should hire somebody based on what they bring to the table, no matter what their demographics are. But let's just call it a spade a spade. Ageism exists. So how can you, at least do some things to put those signals under the table, so to speak, so people aren't saying, oh, this person's in their late 50s and we don't want to hire them. The other thing too, that somebody else pointed out was that posting stuff like this, and if that does go viral, that can be off-putting to hiring managers, whether it be at Stitch Fix, and clearly they were like, hey, we're not getting involved in this. We're just going to let this stay, assuming they've read it. But it also could show that since that post is out there, if she's up for other jobs at other companies, people could see the post, and it could work either way, right? It's a double-edged sword. They could be like, oh my gosh, I love that you did this. I love your creativity and outside the box thinking. Or other people could say, oh, you're going to be a nightmare employee. They may form that opinion, and we don't want to move forward with you because of that. So again, it could backfire. I'm of the prior opinion, right? I think, wow, I love this outside the box thinking. I love all the things I think you could bring to the table, but again, everybody's not me. Let's talk a little bit about why companies might not respond. And I think ignoring posts like this may actually hurt the company's reputation more than it helps, because I did a quick cursory look at Stitch Fix's website and went to the values, how we treat each other and all that stuff. And it could be I don't know anything about Stitch Fix, so let me just have that as a disclaimer. But sometimes when you see companies behaving like this, whether it be simply ghosting or however they interact with the public, that's antithetical to what their values say on their wall, on their website, or whatever it is, that could be an indicator of how they operate. That they're just like, hey, here's our values, but they're just there. We actually operate like this. So, that could give you an indicator of maybe it's a toxic work environment or whatever it is. I think that ignoring public conversations like this is a missed opportunity for Stitch Fix in this case to actually engage and say, hey, Colleen, thanks for your post. You're super creative. Unfortunately, we're not hiring remote people. There's so many off ramps for this conversation for Stitch Fix that still, it makes them show up as a great employer versus just ghosting somebody. So that's just my 2 cents. If I were in Stitch Fix's place, I probably would have responded and tried to make some lemonade out of lemons. So what can job seekers learn in this situation? So if you find yourself looking for a job and, this happens to you, you're getting ghosted, think about being creative. Think outside the box and how you communicate. Again, it could backfire, but if you plan, and do your research about what a company's culture is like and different things like that. In fact, if you looked at my interview with Cynthia Williams-Young a couple of weeks ago, this worked out well for her. She got declined for a job as a flight attendant at Southwest Airlines. She wrote the CEO a letter. He thought it was hilarious. She then began a 20-plus year career working for Southwest Airlines up into the highest, most ranks of the company. So that worked out well for her, but she knew that her communication to the CEO would resonate with them based on the company culture. So, you've got to, check and adjust your communication style that meets the company where it is. And again, viral posts, they could backfire on you. So keep that in mind too. Make sure you're really being thoughtful about what you're saying before you hit upload, because once it's on the internet, it's there forever, even if you try and delete it. Just because a post goes viral, it gives us a dopamine hit, right? We get the likes, we get the sense of community and all the things, but it may not yield anything, and it could actually yield some negative behind the scenes stuff if that's opinions people are forming of you. So all I'm saying here is I say be yourself, be authentic, be unapologetic about who you are, but also be thoughtful about it where there's a time and a place and a platform for how you show up. So just think about that. And also, again, I'm going to underline, do your research on these companies from the standpoint of what their culture is, talk to people who work there, all the things to inform how you show up, whether it be online, on your resume, or even in that interview. So, word to the wise is do your homework. Let me speak to recruiters in the company for this last part, right? It takes 2 seconds to acknowledge a response, right? So, whether it be on LinkedIn in response to a post like this, or what? I actually had a recruiter in here. Her name's Chris Englund a few weeks ago. And she was like, some recruiters are inherently lazy, right? They will have all these applicants, that have applied for these jobs, but they filter out ones that they want to focus on. And then they close the rec out once it's been filled and then don't disposition the other candidates. So the applicant tracking system then sends them the thanks but no thanks email. So when people don't do that process right, it results in the candidate getting ghosted and frankly, it could lose business, right? One thing I learned at Southwest, was you treat every candidate as a potential customer. So even if you're not selecting that candidate for employment, you want to make sure they're treated with respect and dignity throughout the process and even in the follow-up, so that they say, hey, while I didn't get hired, I still had a great experience as a candidate, and I'm still going to be a customer of that organization. That's vitally important. And as a brand, you could get, these posts could help, you could actually tarnish your brand in other candidates' eyes, and good applicants may not apply for you. They'd be like, look, they treated Colleen like crap and didn't even bother to engage with her post or send her an acknowledgement of her application. I'm not even going to bother to apply there. So in this very cutthroat recruiting time, you've got to make sure, as an employer, you're putting your best foot forward from a candidate experience standpoint. So I think at the end of the day, Colleen's post is a master class in personal branding. Again, unapologetically, authentically herself, and I absolutely love that. And Colleen and I say bravo. And I hope by the time I publish this, you've already gotten a job that's better than the Stitch Fix job. Fingers crossed for you. But it also, it does highlight at the end of the day this disconnect between branding and hiring from a company standpoint. One thing when I was at Starbucks, we did this kind of comparison between a candidate experience at McDonald's and a candidate experience at Starbucks. So at Starbucks, the candidate had very high expectations of how life would be as a Starbucks employee, or partner, as Starbucks calls them, right? But their experience actually as an employee of Starbucks was considerably lower. In contrast, McDonald's, the candidates came in thinking very low opinions, right? The bar was very low for them. They did not think they'd have a very good experience as an employee. And then in contrast, they had high ratings from an employee experience standpoint. So if you're from a branding standpoint at a company, you've got to pay attention. And these experiences that candidates have should equal or pave the way for their experiences when they actually become an employee. Again, I'm going to say it one more time. Bravo, Colleen. I hope you've gotten a job. But if you like content like this, again, I'm on a mission to share what I've learned along the way with you so you can get that dream job, get that promotion, or just survive corporate America. So once again, my name's Rob, and this channel is a bit of a passion project for me. So I'd be absolutely honored if you would like and subscribe and stay tuned for my weekly videos that come out. That would be awesome, and it actually really helped me out. So until next time, be you, you do you, and hopefully you'll be getting that job soon. So until next time, take care. This video was recorded and produced by Just Talk Studios, the premier video podcasting studio in Bellevue, Washington. Visit justtalkstudios.com to learn more and book your session today.